You don't want people, Rob, having to wait 15 seconds with no sultry sounds. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Common Good Podcast. Tuesday, the, what is it, 28th or something like that? 30th of
30th.
May. 30th.
Yeah.
Jeez. I got some stuff I'm supposed to do by the end of May.
Well, you got today and tomorrow.
Yeah, I better hurry up. I better hustle. Well, here in Minneapolis, we do No Mo May. I know, Rob, that you in Northwest Arkansas do No Mo April. We were gone for 5 days at a family wedding in New York City. Came home only to find out that our neighbors, according to my neighbor across the street, said we decided on No Mo most of May, not No Mo May. So our yard looks like a jungle and an uncared for house, and everybody else, they mowed this weekend. And all of a sudden it was like, well, the Padgetts are either super committed to those bees or just don't really care.
Yeah, I can imagine with the Memorial Day holiday, there's that desire to just,
clean it up,
give it a clean shave and be out in the backyard without having to worry about ticks or something.
Bees, yeah, or bees, or all the things that like an unmowed yard is supposed to produce for you. We don't want any of those when we're actually using the yard. That's my wife is a very committed grower of things in the summer in our backyard, and we have a large garden area, 5 big box beds full of vegetables, and the thing she's fighting all the time are the very critters that live in the wild. I mean, like, outside is great and beautiful, and you want things to grow naturally, and you want to eat out of your own yard, but you don't want the rabbits eating them, you don't want the deer eating them, you don't want the bees and buzzes, and you don't want the worms and it's just like, I don't know, we're fighting against nature like we're in the third chapter of the book of Genesis or something around here. How are things looking there in Northwest Arkansas weather-wise? You guys hanging tight?
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's been sunny and great.
And then slide that back into that.
Did you just hear some loud noise of maybe me clicking on a tab of maybe a guitar video I was watching once?
Yeah. So we got some guitar lessons.
Everybody.
Yeah. So we'll take it out in post. We got just beautiful, beautiful weather, and my sister-in-law is visiting for the weekend and into this week, and so we're having a good time with her and her children, who I refer to as my nibblings.
Really? I think in places like Northwest Arkansas, maybe. Why would you call them nibbling?
Are you familiar with the word nibblings?
Well, I'm familiar with the word nibble, and I'm really hoping it just is not related to that.
Nibblings is the gender neutral term for nieces and nephews.
Like siblings?
Nibblings. Yeah, but nibblings, nieces and nephews. It's the gender neutral. So I love saying that they're my nibblings.
That is just look, I get it that language has to develop. We create new words all the time. There were none, and now we have many. Many, by the way, are only spelled with 5 letters, and some of them were hard to figure out today, by the way. I don't know if you wordled, but today's...
I got it.
I did too. At number 6, once I was panicking and having to look at a website to ask for some help on words that have a thing in a place and a thing here and there. And it got me. So I know the language needs to develop, and we're going to make up new words all the time, and we should, but they don't all work, especially our mashup little words, like blog was okay, I guess, when it was or a vlog, a video.
I'm not a fan of vlog, but nibbling. Nibbling. Do you like nibbling? No,
you don't like nibbling? Much. I feel like it's like someone you nibble, and then believing that it's your children of your sibling. No, may I never use the word cuke for cucumber, guac for guacamole, or nibbling for relatives of my siblings.
Yeah, you know what word I do hate? I hate the word kiddos. Kiddos, not just kids. Kids is good. Like kiddos does not need to be abbreviated, or kids does not need to be abbreviated into kiddos. It's just
you don't need to make it longer. Yeah, like an
right.
abbreviation.
Yeah,
You don't need
not a fan of kiddos, and I really hate
abbreviation.
you. And folks that are watching along with us, please in the comments tell us the words that you hate.
Oh, my love,
and
please.
we will. Oh, I love this kind of conversation. I hate the word wifey.
Huh? My wifey.
Wifey. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Okay.
If you talk about like, you spent the weekend with your wifey and your kiddos, I'm out of that conversation. I'm just out. And I'm also, and you know this about me, that I enjoy turning a noun into a verb as much as anybody.
As much as literally anybody can efforting.
Yeah, because I love using the word effort as a verb. I'm efforting that. But I hate the word gift as a verb. Hate it. Hate it, hate it, hate it.
Like I gifted something? Like
yes. No, you gave. We already have a word. It's gave. You don't have to gift something. You give it.
But isn't it the intention that when you've turned something over to someone else, sometimes it could be just a natural exchange, but in the other time it would be this had the intention of being a gift?
Yes.
Like if you gave $5 to the clerk at the store to pay for your sorbet, or you gifted $5 to your nibbling. Oh my gosh. I really hope we get like a one of those violation strikes on the YouTube channel for like inappropriate language, like dangerous.
Just for the word nibbling.
I'll tell you, when Ron DeSantis hears the word nibbling, he is going to sleepwalk himself right into a full on,
he will. I'm sure
connection. His wifey will go bonkers and get him. I'm
sure Ron DeSantis will ban the word nibbling in Florida the same way Sarah Huckabee Sanders banned the word Latinx in Arkansas.
See, did she? Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about that.
All official documents cannot use the
Latinx.
term Latinx.
See, the thing with nibbling, I guess what I've done, and maybe it's the same thing with sibling, is it the ing makes it feel like it's a verb. Right?
It does. It's not, I thought you were making a smooth transition into talking about politics, but then you came really back to nibbling.
No, I'm really spiraling. Okay, let's take one more nibble at this, and then we'll set it aside and sort of be done with it. All right, so let us know in the little chats there, especially if you're on YouTube, which is our favorite place for you to chat. If you have words, and I don't know generally how the weather is, or if you're like me feeling sort of a little vomit in your throat over that.
Yeah. How do you feel about the word nibbling? That's what we would like to know.
Hey, Rob, I feel like in politics world, we are at this place right now where it's like the preseason before the preseason of a sporting of a sport launching. When I was a college basketball player, we had captain's practice, which happened before the preseason, which came before the season, right?
Yes.
So like in baseball, I guess there would be, people often know spring training, but there's like the season before preseason.
Yeah.
Because it feels like Labor Day is the start of preseason. January is the start of the season, the political season for politics, 2024. So, September, October, November, December, we're kind of getting there. Now you're in this period that's just before that and they say this is the season where champions are born, where champions win. So it's the summer. So the summer, a year and a half before a national election, real low hanging fruit. There's just not a lot there to, I guess the opposite of low hanging fruit, but not a lot there to people talk about. But it's one of the most important times because all the decisions that are made right now, the people that decide to run for office, and we're going to hear your story and some insights on what it takes to run for office, all the rest of it. But we're in this period of time now where I think a lot of us just don't even want to talk about politics. Like we talk about faith and politics around here in the Vote Common Good world all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And being the Tuesday after Memorial Day, I was even feeling myself like, oh my gosh, seriously. Can't you just have the summer before the summer of the election year be the one that you don't have to talk about all this stuff?
That's interesting though, because we've had some big news since we last talked.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh no, it's not without some things happening, but it just, I don't know, it feels like Memorial Day's behind. You've got 12 weeks of summer now. And this should be the time, when you just get to enjoy. At least where I live. I know people that live in places where the weather's hot, super hot in the summer. They're like, oh my gosh, summer's when we just stay inside and are in the air conditioning and, I doom scroll. That's what we do January and February around here. We don't do that. We don't do that in July and August. We get out and play in the Midwest. Yeah, so let's chat a little bit about some of the big news that has happened in politics.
I mean, unsurprisingly, Ron DeSantis got into the presidential race. Launched his campaign on Twitter, using Twitter Spaces, which is, if you're not familiar, Twitter Spaces was Twitter's response to Clubhouse. Remember Clubhouse?
Yeah, is that gone now? Is that ceased?
I think it's still around. It just is no longer nearly as popular in the zeitgeist as it was. And so Twitter Spaces is basically an audio platform. It's essentially kind of like a live podcast, a little bit like this. And there's people, you use your mobile phone. I don't think it's available on Twitter desktop. And so Ron DeSantis got on Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk and somebody else whose name I can't remember, who was actually the host of it, and to announce his presidential campaign, which is interesting, kind of going at Trump's 2016 campaign was really dominated by Twitter. Took Twitter to a whole new level, and so it has since being banned by Twitter and then reinstated, has still not returned to Twitter. So it was really interesting that Ron DeSantis trying to stake out the territory of conservatives in the vein of Elon Musk, trying to draft off of his coattails with a certain.
Remember when Elon Musk was like, I just think this should be a town square and there should be all people and all voices that are going to be shared and everything should be. Is that what that's
No.
still working for you there, Elon? You still is that
still
your point?
The whole thing, they claim that it was because of so many people joining the Twitter space, but all sorts of technical difficulties. They had to switch and do it on a different Twitter space account with whoever the other guy was, whose name I can't remember. A few 100,000 people joined in, which, I mean, clearly if we had a few 100,000 people listening right now to our podcast, we would be thrilled. But we're also not announcing that we're running for president of the United States.
We're also not Elon Musk, who has taken over the platform, and a person who is a governor and wants to run for president against Donald Trump, and spent a whole lot of energy trying to tell people we're going to do that thing here. And a bunch of people tuned in, for sure, as they should. And then, like a SpaceX launch, they just weren't prepared for the thing to work. Like, I get it that in rocket science, and we talk about this on every other Thursday with astrophysicist Paul Wallace here on the Common Good podcast. But in that world, you're trying to do things that haven't been done before, and so failure, or what do they call it in the SpaceX world, Rob? They call it an unplanned disassembly. When the rocket blew up, the unplanned disassemblies, that really is part of the learning process. That's something that you do. When you're a 15-year-old social media company that should be able to have hundreds of thousands of people, because that's the point, for it not to work and then people to lose their jobs over it, I think is a little indicator that if every time Ron DeSantis shows up, people lose their jobs. He is a job
destroyer.
I know at least one guy that's not going to be voting for Ron DeSantis, and that's the person who got fired because Twitter is a disaster, has been defunded, They defunded Twitter and fired a bunch of people, and now trying to do it on a shoestring of a budget because there's no money there because Elon Musk ruined it. And it's just such a nightmare. I got to tell you, Rob, I mean, I think for Ron DeSantis to pick Twitter is the indicator of all indicators that his head is in the smallest of audience spaces.
Really?
Like he's trying to troll. Yeah, he's trying to troll Donald Trump by being like, I will do this on the platform that you're not on anymore. That literally in the last 3 years, millions of people have left. That is now full of bots and nonsense and just crowded with, and it is populated by people who are opinion shapers and makers. Totally get that. But if the visual or the story you want of people right now, 5 days out, talking about the launch of your presidential campaign, is that you picked the most divisive social media platform that is targeted to the smallest subset of people.
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to go after middle-aged, angry white men, I guess our podcast, or right there is a great place to go. But it's just an indicator that Ron DeSantis' whole thing and his business about we're going to be the campaign that brings an end to wokeness in America, which is what he said on Fox News over the weekend. It's just ridiculous. I mean, honestly, had you been on Twitter in 2009 launching a presidential campaign, that would have been a big deal. To be there in 2023, picking the punchline of social media outlets. Now I get it. I'm there. I use it. We're broadcasting this thing right now on Twitter. But in all honesty, it is not where social media is going. Had he even been on TikTok, right? Which probably would have had problems since it's, a Chinese fishing expedition. But
Republicans hate TikTok.
Yeah, they do. Had it been anywhere else other than on like a platform that, and then for it not to work is just bonkers to me, just utterly bonkers. The only thing that a social media platform like Twitter needs to have is the capacity for its servers to serve the number of people who are part of the platform. And if they said, we didn't expect, get a load of this, we didn't expect this many people to log on, then why did you do it on Twitter Spaces?
Yes.
You really didn't want 500,000 people just using their mobile phones to tap into something? Because you know where they could have done it? They could have done it on YouTube. They could have done it on Instagram Live. They could have done it on Facebook. They probably could have done it on, I don't know, TikTok or Snitch
Truth
or
Social.
Snatch or Truth Social. They probably could. But no, they picked something because they really wanted people to pay attention. I mean, they could have done it on the news. They really could have, picked a place in Florida. And then, Rob, just let me ask you this. Who launches a presidential campaign that's audio only?
Yeah.
Are we in 1939 and we're now going to have radio transmissions and the voice only? What would make Ron DeSantis think the one thing I want people to associate with me, if you're Ron DeSantis, is my voice? Have you heard the man's voice? It is not an appealing thing to experience.
Not melodious.
Yes.
There's not like a it's not a he's got a voice made for television. I don't know what the they say a face made for radio. He's got a voice
nasally.
Made for,
it's not great.
He's got a voice made for email.
Honestly, the whole rollout of that and then the places that they've gone and the things that they've done, it is not about expanding the electorate. It is not about saying, hey, I want you folks to get so excited that when the nomination process comes to your county and you have to go in a primary or the first ones are going to be caucus style, I want people who've never thought about being in a primary before to be a part of this. Ron DeSantis is clearly not saying the way I'm going to win the Republican nomination is to broaden the tent.
Right.
And everything he has done, the way the campaign is rolled out, how he's put his staff together, and that his wife is the primary person running it, so he's running it like some kind of a family business. This whole idea, it just shows if anybody was hoping that Ron DeSantis was going to be the alternative to Donald Trump, it is not going to happen. This is Rudy Giuliani level of bad in 2015 or in 2008. It's just he's going to be Scott Walker. Remember that guy when he was the big savior from Wisconsin that was going to run? Or the fella from Minnesota, great state. The great state of Minnesota was going to be Tim Pawlenty. He was going to come crashing in, and he was going to say, though, it's going to be the Minnesota way. And these governors just fall apart and collapse. And Ron DeSantis, the only reason anybody is interested in that guy outside of the small, sleepwalking crowd that's unwoke is that he would be an alternative to Donald Trump. His primary argument for being a candidate is, I'm not Trump. When you ask him why, they asked him on Fox News, I watched it this morning. Why should people be excited about your candidacy? Well, I can win.
And serve 2 terms.
And serve 2 terms, which was a comment that if you elect Trump, we're just back in this again 4 years later, because he can't. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when your candidacy is not about, here's what I'm thinking about the American people. Here's where I think America is. It's, I can win. I can do it for 2 years, and we can make sure wokeness doesn't happen in America. Really? Because you think what most of your problem is, Ron DeSantis, culture is moving in a way that you don't like, and you're going to stop it? If we ever elected any elected official, let alone a president of the United States, whose primary promise is to stop the American people from developing culturally in the way we're developing? Literally, what are these people talking about? I just don't understand for the life of me how this makes any sense as a presidential campaign.
Yeah. I am looking for, I know very little about Ron DeSantis' wife, Casey, but she has already taken a bit of a villainous position amongst, people that I follow. And, there's a lot of talk that she's the real power player and he's merely a puppet, which, that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm interested in learning more about her and understanding the role that she plays. I really can't quite understand the appeal of Ron DeSantis at this point. I mean, I just he's I have long complained that we're not going to get a Gen X president, and so help me if the Gen X president we get is Ron DeSantis, I'm not gonna be happy about that either.
Oh, he is just a.
But yeah, I just don't get the appeal. I don't get the appeal. There are other people in the race who I do get the appeal. I get the appeal of a Nikki Haley. I get the appeal of a Tim Scott. Even Chris Christie, who's going to announce his campaign here soon. I get the Southern gentleman like Asa Hutchinson. I get all of that. I don't get Ron DeSantis. Yeah. I don't get the appeal. I really don't.
No. Look, it just we are well on the record for saying why we think Donald Trump is a hazard to the well-being of the planet and everyone who lives on it, right? So
yes.
No, but what Donald Trump did was opened up politics to a whole group of people who were not involved.
Yeah.
I have family members that I count in that group. We've met them all over the country. Polling shows it. Then he lost a whole bunch of people after the nightmare of his presidency was experienced by us. The only way, and you just start going back through the presidents who've won, they have always been the ones who have opened up the political system to people more broadly than those who came before them.
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis won't do that. He can't do that. He has decided, I'm not doing that. If you think the people that you want to vote for you are the people who are mad that politics is becoming too left leaning, you are already talking to a group of people who know a lot about politics. You're not expanding to a new group of people to bring them in, or people that feel that they've been left out and left behind. Not doing that at all. So Ron DeSantis, his whole shtick is somehow people are as mad about Mickey Mouse, literally, and pronouns, and apparently a whole lot of people that are really worried about women's track and field fairness, because somehow transgender people have ruined track and field sports for women's sports. I mean, there's a fiction that exists in that world. What else does Ron DeSantis have? He's not going to be the pro-business guy. In fact, they've even said in their campaign, they're not the pro-business candidate.
Yep.
Who's well then who really the part of Florida that people like is the sun and the beach and Disney. That's the part that they like. No one says, honey, let's go to Florida. Ron DeSantis is the governor. It's just such silliness. I don't know. And his idea that like we're going to take Florida to the rest of the world, we're going to take it to Iowa, and
we're going to make America Florida again.
Yeah, we're going to make America Florida again. It's I don't know. So look, we're going to talk about Ron DeSantis for the next 6 months because he's going to hang around simply because he has enough money. But Jeb Bush had enough money, had the most, is nowhere. Hillary Clinton had enough money, didn't go anywhere. People having enough money is not the point. I know everybody thinks money is all there is in politics.
Listen, money is part of it. But it's not the whole story.
It's like wealth. It's like being rich. Once you reach a certain point, you have enough, and all the money after that is just color. It's not changing the substance, right? Once you reach a point of financial stability, and if a candidate can reach a point of financial stability, then they're going to be off and running. But look, I thought Tim Scott actually has come out. I think Tim Scott is the sleeper, and I think Tim Scott will pick up a lot of people in Iowa, and then when he gets around to South Carolina in that order, I think he's going to struggle in the Northeast. But I think if he can really land hard in Iowa and he can take care of South Carolina, there is a chance for him, because for the people who want as much as Ron DeSantis wants to say we don't want a woke America, Tim Scott, as he said it himself at his own launch, just walks in the room and he's like, I am the alternative to the left's narrative about how this all works. Yep. My age, my race, my opinions, these are all things that confound the people who stand against us. And I'm telling you, that guy has a real chance. And that concerns me on the policy level. Like if we ever do get back to the danger of Donald Trump not harassing the people of this country, and we're back into whose ideas are best, as we saw in the debt ceiling conversations, over the last week. Tim Scott's ideas, I think, are not the best. I think Tim Scott's ideas are very harmful to the future of the country. But that's the kind of conversation you can have as citizens and people that care about public policy and all the rest of this. I think Tim Scott's got has a real chance to get some people behind him.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's real interesting. You just wonder what is if people want an alternative to Donald Trump, people are positioning themselves as the different alternative. Ron DeSantis is one kind of alternative. Tim Scott is another kind of alternative. Asa Hutchinson is another kind of alternative. It's going to be real interesting to see what kind of alternative people want.
Now, Dave McDermott on Facebook has a very subtle counterpoint to my statement by simply asking the question, who is Tim Scott now?
Exactly.
I don't think he's being snarky. I'm going to grant that he probably doesn't know. He is a senator from South Carolina. He's a black man who has a conservative narrative about how conservative approaches to government was his pathway out of what he says was the family turmoil and the generational poverty that he had experienced. And so, as he says, he went from his grandfather being a sharecropper to him being a congressman. And he says that he can narrate a story about how conservatism was the pathway that led him there. He's articulate, and his faith narrative for the evangelical and Catholic voters is the most compelling. His version of that, I promise you what, it's not Ron DeSantis. And his commitment to signing the most, as he's put it, the most conservative and restrictive abortion laws that will pass my desk as president, I will sign it, is the kind of thing that the real organizers of the anti-abortion movement really want. They know Donald Trump's not going to do it, and they don't know if Ron DeSantis will, but Scott's there. So that's who he is. He's got a deep faith network.
Also
raised pretty good amount of money as which launched last week. But the fact that people haven't heard of him is likely a problem.
I mean, the interesting thing that, just from the, I don't know, kind of whatever, just as an interesting cultural point or whatever. I mean, single man, which, I think it's been a long, long time since we've had a bachelor as president of the United States.
Yeah, like not in modern time.
Right.
As we mentioned, that would be just something I would desire so deeply. So we don't ever have to talk for 4 years about what is the first gentleman or the first lady doing. Jobs shouldn't come with your spouse when you're in elected office.
Yep.
You don't get a twofer when you hire somebody.
Yep.
And I just wish that would go away. Well, Yabit says, look, like DeSantis, Scott will win every state that Trump won in 2020, and he says he's going to win Georgia as well. I'm not entirely sure about that. We'll see what the system and the party feels like and looks like in Georgia after an indictment comes down on the twice impeached failed presidential candidate Donald Trump. When that happens, that's going to divide the state, and Republicans are going to have a hard time staying cohesive in Georgia. I think that's going to be a real problem. Yeah. All right, Rob, let's talk about the debts, the debt ceiling. Any thoughts on this? Just ridiculous kabuki theater that never was going to be a problem, and they just both made themselves heroes for doing nothing.
Doug, here's what I
should have done and never should have been in this problem.
Yeah, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go full screen, Doug, and I want you to rant about the debt ceiling. Just give it to us, because it's going to be a while before you have the chance to do this again.
No,
make it happen.
Look at the feed from last Thursday. We did a whole thing of the debt ceiling. I'll just say this full screen. Look, there is no. Rob is now walked away. If you're only listening to the audio, Rob maybe had a bit of a personal need, but he has now gotten up and walked away. I should probably check. Maybe he sent me a message somewhere in this and said, "Here you go. Look, here's the thing about the debt ceiling. In my view, the Republicans created a crisis that then they're bragging about now having solved. Increasing the amount that the United States is going to pay to the citizens that it's borrowed money from over the last 200 years is not something that Congress should not do. By the way, I'll stress this again for those who are new to listening, and just a little friendly reminder for those who listen regularly. This is not the same as increasing debt. The debt ceiling is how much money can any particular Congress pay to pay the people who have taken their money voluntarily out of the system by buying bonds for the most part. There's a few other things, but primarily by buying bonds so that money can come out of the system without coming out via taxes. You can watch last Thursday's whole conversation about this, about how the federal government budget works. It's different than other budgets and so on. So this is the time where the money comes out of the system that people, if you buy a $50 savings bond, that $50 is now no longer in circulation because you gave the money to the Treasury and they just got rid of it. Then later they're going to pay you back that $50 plus the interest in order for your money not to be in the system. That's what's called on a balance sheet debt. But it's not debt in the same way that if you have a credit card bill or if a state were to sell bonds or something else. It's a different thing because the federal government is the actual creator of the currency. So the Treasury can make as much money as it ever wants to. Just needs to have the authority by Congress to do that. What the debt ceiling is how much can we pay people back for money that they've already voluntarily taken out of the system? That's all that number is. And that number goes up and moves around by a whole lot of different variables, interest rates and other things. So that number changed. But it's not like we said we're spending any more money. What the Republicans did was they said, if we're going to pay our citizens back for the monies that we took out of the system, we need some other things to change. That's what they did. They created a crisis that wasn't a crisis and then said that they've solved the crisis by being real professional about it. And Biden and the administration has chosen to go along with this and to tell that narrative as well and to say, look at us, we all done a good thing and we figured out our problems and we got it solved. And they're going to end up getting, whatever it is, the 218 people to vote for this thing in the House, and it's going to pass the Senate. We're going to move on because it never should have come up in the first place, because we shouldn't have a ceiling on how much the debt can be, because we're always going to raise it. It just has no meaning at all. There you go, Rob. Do you feel more comfortable now?
Yeah. Great. So Joe Biden, listen, I say that I never dreamed I would work so hard to get a president elected that I barely want to be president. That's been my line about Joe Biden since 2020. Joe Biden, and I spent the first year
because you
Joe
wanted
Biden
to be more progressive. We should just clarify for new listeners that your problem is you don't think he goes far enough down some of the progressive sides that you'd like him to.
True, and I also prefer younger candidates. I prefer people with different levels of experience. I mean, all of it. I spent the first year of Joe Biden's presidency very, very nervous that he was going to get the reputation, get tagged with the narrative of someone who had, okay ideas, but he couldn't get anything done. And I thought the withdrawal from Afghanistan was going to be the quintessential moment of his presidency. Joe Biden has turned into an extraordinarily skilled president. I mean, he completely outmaneuvered and destroyed Kevin McCarthy in this debt ceiling debate. Now, I mean, we can set aside all of the questions about the debt ceiling and whether we should have one and the whole kabuki theater of it, and I'm totally with you on that. But in regard to this deal, the framework of this deal that has been made between Joe Biden and Kevin McCarthy, it appears as if Joe Biden wiped the floor with Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like, Kevin McCarthy, I mean, there's not drastic spending cuts. There are not radical work requirements for people with who get government benefits. There is not Joe Biden, like, he flat out won.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely remarkable. And I think I think two things. I think this really helps Joe Biden, giving him momentum headed into the summer and into a time when his reelection campaign is going to be gearing up. I actually think that this debt ceiling debacle on the part of Kevin McCarthy might cost him the speakership, quite frankly.
Yeah, look, if you're right, if some of those more conservatives say,
I mean, they're
we want
lining
a pound
up
of flesh for this. You said you were willing to shut down the government over this and
Yep.
default, and we want to default. They wanted to default.
Yeah.
They thought it would be a good reset. That would
Yep.
be interesting.
Yep. So you've got Congressman Donald, Byron Donald, who you might remember was, one of the favorites of the conservatives during the speaker voting. He's come out as a hard no. Nancy Mace, who is allegedly a moderate Republican, who she doesn't seem to know what she is. She is the one who Annie Andrews, one of our favorites, challenged. She's come out as a hard no against this agreement. I think there's a real possibility that this is going to get passed over the loud and strong objections of the Freedom Caucus folks, who were then going to, challenge Kevin McCarthy's speakership, and we might be back to where we were in January, watching C-SPAN nonstop.
Yeah, I wonder if they're willing to throw down over this. Now, I would guess that McCarthy and Scalise and the other thugs that have to do the thuggery in the Republican caucus have figured this out. I'm guessing they've gone around and said, is anyone going to, because it only takes one of the rule changes they put in place is any Republican can call for a new vote on the speech. And if someone does that and it throws this thing back in and then that all passes, that person who called for the vote is in bad shape. So if you're going to call for the vote, you've got to make sure that you have enough people who are willing to swap out speakers. And, they're going to play a game of chicken on this. So I'm guessing they have counted the votes, and that's probably what has taken this so long to get to where it is wanting to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. Yeah, look, and Biden has been willing to go along with this, and he's been willing to give McCarthy a sense of prestige through it. He's basically said the way you negotiate with your people on the other side of the table is you honor them and you make sure that way you treat them emboldens them with their own people. That's a negotiating tactic that Biden has believed in for a long time, that every negotiation we get into, you need to come out of this being more honored and more respected than you were when you came into it. That's a philosophy. And I heard McCarthy come out yesterday and say, I want to just thank Biden's team and his staff, and they're very professional and very smart. To put it in your terms, we just got rickrolled by these people and thrown on the mat and pinned in like 4 seconds of a junior high wrestling match because we found out we were wrestling the varsity wrestler from the other school. And they smacked us down, and they did a great job beating us in the game that we asked for, in the thing that we demanded. Now, I know that there's progressives, and I'm in this crowd. I don't think the Biden team should have been willing to negotiate on any of this. I think they should have just said, you can't. But as it turns out, if you don't win elections, and if Democrats are not going to win enough seats to control the House, you don't then get to have the world the way you want it. You have to live in a world where it has consequences. Fortunately, there were a lot of races that didn't go the way they could have. Democrats won enough races in 2022 to keep this from being a total disaster, because had they had 40 seats, man, they would have been ripping the future of the country, and the budgets that have already been passed would have been dismantled. You know what I was surprised though, Rob, in all honesty, what I was surprised was not in here was repealing Obamacare. I never heard him mention it once. Do you remember how much political blood was let over repealing Obamacare? It was the thing, the big man. I mean, what they finally got rid of was that you don't have to pay a fine. They finally, just got rid of that. But that was it. Isn't it a little shocking that we came all the way to the point of nearly shutting down the government, and it wasn't over that issue? That was the organizing principle issue to stop Obama. You know what I haven't hardly heard a word about since the election of Biden? Obamacare or Barack Obama. The only one who ever talks about him is Donald Trump. Nobody else. Like everybody has just moved on, which is also a political lesson to be learned. It doesn't take long for the ideas and the leaders and the battles of an age to just be seen as completely antiquated and over there and not something that we're dealing with anymore. And look, this debt ceiling, we will say in 6 months, oh, remember that ridiculousness? That was happening back in the spring of 2023. It'll just be obliterated. Well, first of all, by 3 indictments, they're going to come down against Trump. We're just going to stop talking about everything and only talk about whether he has a plea deal that's in the works. That's going to keep him out of jail. But
court
eventually, yeah, it's going to be OJ all over again. But eventually, we're just going to forget all about this. And it was all a big bunch of nothingness and waste of time. But it did make McCarthy look like a real diplomat while he got pinned to the mat.
And I'd just say, I would just say, as a person who gets their family's insurance through the exchange known as Obamacare, I'm happy that Republicans have seen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Look, like even the thing when they wanted to get rid of Obamacare, all the things that they said we're going to keep were the things in Obamacare.
Yeah.
It was like saying, honey, I'm going to redesign the kitchen. I'm going to get rid of the junk drawer. But I'm going to use this little drawer over here, and I'm going to put all the things that were in this drawer. I'm going to put them over there in that drawer.
Yeah.
But it's going to be over by the kitchen, and we're not going to call it the junk drawer anymore. We're going to call it the specialized items drawer. That's what they basically said with Obamacare. All the things that you wanted were going to stay, but we're not going to call it Obama. Well, we're not going to call it the health insurance, man.
Yes.
Now, look, I think it should have gone much further. I'm not happy with Obamacare at all. I think we should have gone to something where it didn't just privilege the insurance companies and the providers and keep that whole system in place and have it be reinforced for another generation. I think we should have moved to something more like a single payer system, or better yet, have put doctors on public payroll and nurses and all the rest of it. So you have much more. The public side needs to not just be on the insurance side. Boy, now I feel like it's 2018 and we're talking about this again. But the solution is not how does insurance get paid. The solution needs to be how is care provided.
Yes.
You need to be working on the care provider side, not just on the reimbursement of private doctors and private medical companies only. If you really want to compete, even Medicare needs to shift to something where the whole system is much more sustainable. So I think a lot more could have been done. It's kind of too bad we're done talking about that for really probably our lifetimes, maybe our children's lifetimes. I don't think this is going to be revisited at any point because there doesn't seem to be any political appetite for it, or even person appetite for it. We've just decided we're going to live with a private healthcare delivery system that at some level is publicly reimbursed. Whether that's
partially,
whether that's Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid or the exchanges or whatever, that's, and people getting subsidies for the exchanges.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it's going to go. And I think that's a bit too bad. All right, Rob. Well, the other thing we want to talk about today was a little insider view from you as someone who ran for Congress. And at this very period, I think last week you were saying it was the 5-year anniversary or 6-year anniversary of your deciding. Is that right? Or 8 year, 7 year, 12 year? I don't know, some anniversary of when you had decided you were going to run for Congress. Because when someone decides to run for office, that process starts way before anybody else in the world knows about it. So give us a little insight. What is it like for someone who's deciding right now, I think I want to be in public, I want to do some kind of public service job as an elected official. And that could be Congress like you were running for, or it could be at a county level or a state level, or somebody who wants to run for president, something else. What goes on for somebody who's thinking about running for office?
Yeah, it's the conversations in your head about, do I really want to do this? These are the conversations that should be happening. These are the things you should be thinking about. What actually is the job? Our system of government is set up with 3 equal branches of government. There's executive jobs, president, mayor, county, governor. There's, here in Arkansas,
county manager.
Yeah, county manager. Here in Arkansas, we call it a county judge, even though it's not a judicial branch. But then there are judicial opportunities as well to run for, and then there's others that are more legislative, like Congress, or a state representative or city council. You think about what the job is, what issues are touched by that job, and if your thing is wanting national health care, running for county clerk might not be the the best way to get there. You gotta think about what your issues are, and if that job actually touches those issues. Kind of thinking through those things. You've got to ask the question, how much is this going to cost? And do I have that, or can I raise that? Regardless of, what everyone's opinions about how we fund our elections in America. And I think that's a worthwhile discussion to have. The reality is that our elections are currently funded by either the individual who's running or people donating to them. And elections typically cost more than you expect that they would. The average congressional race costs $2 million. A medium-sized mayor's race is like $50,000, which a medium-sized city mayor's race, which that even seems kind of low to me. So you got to think through that. One of the things I tell candidates all the time is you absolutely have to have your spouse, your partner, and your kids on board. This is something that you can't run for office by yourself, regardless of the position. And if your partner is a little bit iffy on it, that's going to be a problem. They absolutely have to be on board. I remember in 2017 or 2018 during that campaign, I talked with a guy who was running for Congress in Tennessee, and his wife wasn't so sure that he should do it, and was just and it was immediately a red flag to me. And his campaign never really got off the ground. And I attribute it completely to, it wasn't the right time for him to run because his wife wasn't on board with the idea. It's just too all consuming to do it alone. Also, if you work a full-time job, like if you got to think through that as well. Because running for office is not something you do in secret. It's, it's something that you want people to know that you're doing. And so you've got to think through, like, what are the implications for my work? Does my company have a policy against people running for office? That happened to me when I ran in early 2018. I had been hired by a company that had a policy that employees couldn't run for office. I was told that they had made an exception because, again, I was not was not running for office in secret. And I was told that they had made an exception because they wanted to hire me. The day my street signs went up, I got a call from Human Resources and said, "Hey, Rob, are you running for Congress?" I said, "Yes." Do you know that we have a policy that people can't run for office if they're an employee? I said, "Yes, I was told that when I was hired that there was an exception made." "Well, Rob, I'm going to have to call you back." And hung up the phone with the person from HR, and I packed up my desk and went home because I knew how that call was going to go.
You knew how this was going.
Yeah. But I walked away from that and feeling like, not discouraged that I had lost my job, but really encouraged that my street signs had worked.
See, that's glass half full right there.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
attitude of a winner.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
the attitude of a winner. When someone's I want to talk a little bit about this choice of what role someone's going to run for. I just did a quick search here of asking the internet how many people represent me
Mm.
where I live. So I put my address into the myreps.datamade.us site. Seems real legit. And it came up with 22 at the state and the county and the federal level, 22 people, and then 5 city council members, 27.
Hmm.
Now, I will say that 5 of those look like they are Supreme Court justices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those are Supreme Court justices, which I don't really feel like the Supreme Court justices are my representatives. So,
Sure.
I could take those 7 out. So I've got, 20 to 27 people, which means that I could, because I'm taking Supreme Court justices out of this because I don't think I can just run for a Supreme Court justice. Maybe I could. But legitimately, I could run for 20 other seats.
Yeah. Yep.
That's overwhelming to people. And that doesn't even count school board,
Yeah.
which is a very legitimate
Right.
way because I don't
Yes.
have children anymore, and so I'm not doing school. It doesn't even include school board. How does a person typically decide? Do people get into running for office, or people are listening to this or have a friend? Is it because they have some issue and did like what you said, like I have an issue I care a lot about? Because it feels like
So there's
caring about an issue is the last reason you should run for office, because whatever office you're in, even if it deals with that issue, that's not all it's dealing with, right? It's like, you know what it sometimes can feel like? Sometimes when I go to the hardware store and I need the one ratchet attachment, I need a 9/16 bit, and then I buy the entire set. Maybe I didn't need to buy the set. Maybe I just needed to have the one. Maybe I should just influence a representative rather than investing all this. How do and how should people decide which of 20 elected official roles should an average person decide they want to run it?
Yeah. So there's ultimately, I think there's a couple of reasons why people decide to run. One is they want a career in politics. Like they want to be involved in public service. They're drawn to it for whatever reason. And so there is part of the political game, so to speak, where you run for a lower office and you kind of work your way up. And there's that kind of system in place. And so somebody might run for a city council position knowing that they eventually want to run for state representative and maybe eventually for Congress, and so they kind of look at the ladder. Part of it too is figuring out kind of what seats are open and available. I had a conversation with someone last week who said, I said to them, they're thinking about running for Congress, and I said to them, no, they're thinking about running for the United States Senate. That's what it was. And I said, well, I'm like, wow, that's kind of a big step to go from never running for office before to running for the United States Senate. I said, why are you thinking the U.S. Senate? And they said, well, where I live, in the city where I live, all of my city council people are people that I like. My congressperson is someone that I like. My state rep, my state senator, somebody that I like.
Yeah.
This is the only position that's open.
It's kind of open for me. Yeah.
Like, well, that's a big jump. Yeah, that's a big jump. So there's lots of reasons. And then there are people who, they care about a particular issue. They care about, whether it's, running for school board because they want to push back against the radicalization that's happening of our school boards, or, I've always joked that if I ever run for mayor of my city here in Arkansas, my one issue will be improving snow removal. because the occasions that we do get a snowstorm, it shuts us down for a week, and the millions of dollars that costs our local economy, that if we invested in a couple of decent snowplows and maybe got one of those guys from Pottstown, Pennsylvania to retire to Springdale and run our snow removal,
like a volunteer fire department. You have a volunteer snow removal. Hey, Rob, I
Yeah,
just have
I
two
mean,
words that'll solve that for you. 2 words: beet juice.
exactly.
Beet
Exactly.
juice. By the way, a little fun fact while Rob takes a drink here of coffee, I'm guessing, or maybe some water. We were in Pottsdale, Pennsylvania, and happened to be in a Pottstown, and meeting with a bunch of people in a old firehouse where they're supporting the now governor in his election in Pennsylvania. And we were chatting with these people, and they're like the city managers, and they run the city snowplows. And it gets very snowy there and very hilly. And they were telling us all these really great stories about running these snowplows and the kids that would take over the streets and not let them run the snowplows because they wanted to play in the streets. So these guys are like, it's our town, so we love these kids. So we just would wait to plow the hill so they could sled down it, like just all this really great stuff. And in the midst of that, and these are gruff, like they run machines kind of people, men and women. They're all real hardy, sort of like tough people. And in the middle of that, Rob says to him, hey, Bill, or whatever his name was. Hey, Bill, do you guys, when it gets real icy, do you guys ever use beet juice to melt the ice? And I mean, I have seen a look of disdain in my life, but this guy looked over at poor Rob Ryersey. And truthfully, it actually is true. Beet juice is one of the things they do with the overextended
So
beet
funny.
subsidies is that it turns into a great ice melt. But this guy was like, no, around here, the ice is real. I don't know where you're from, but we don't
Oh, it's
we don't
fantastic.
woke up and use beet juice. We put chemicals on this street. Oh my gosh, it was one of the great moments of
fantastic
being out and about. All right, Rob, what sympathies should someone have for someone in their life who's running for if someone comes to their door? Maybe they're never going to vote for them because they're not in their political party, but is there just something about the act of saying, vote for me, I'm going to organize my life to ask for your vote, that you think would be a great encouragement for?
Yeah. I think I would encourage everybody that the emotional roller coaster of running for office, particularly the first time, if you've never done it before, is something that you really can't appreciate until you do it. There's the sense of, 1 minute you're feeling like I might actually win this thing. Sure. And then the next minute you feel like this is the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life.
What am I doing?
And you can ping pong back and forth between those things. And so I know it's easy to, when somebody puts themselves out there in the public, to run for office, when you literally put your name out there, whether it's on a sign or whatever, it's easy to think of them as, thick-skinned celebrities that you can take pot shots at and all of that. Just say somebody shows up at your door, even if it's a conservative Republican, that you might disagree with strongly, or whoever it might be. Like, this is a human being who's taken a big risk because they believe in something. And like they're emotionally going through a lot, and I think a little bit more kindness and empathy towards the human beings that are involved in this would be really good, because it is, especially for people who are doing it for the first time, it's a journey like you wouldn't believe.
And truthfully, if someone's at your door or in a parade or standing outside of a grocery store greeting you, they're not going to win, just statistically speaking, right?
Yes.
Most people who win elections are going to win because their party is already, the party they represent is going to get the most votes. They're going to, if someone is out there doing retail level of engagement, they're trying to break through somehow. So rather than, now, if it's a current elected official, that might be a little bit different. You might be able to, want to say to the person, hey, you're the fat cat in the position of power, and I want to tell truth to power and get after you and do all that. But if you're in any other situation where you met someone who's running for, especially if they're running for Congress or even for a state rep or something, and they're not your current state representative, just know they're doing something that they're telling themselves on a regular basis. There's a chance, but I'm not doing this from a position of power. And it's just a helpful thing to know, because our democracy cannot work if people don't offer to be in these roles. And very rarely, George Santos set aside, and maybe Donald Trump, very rarely do people run for office because they don't have an other option to be successful in their life.
That's right.
Very rarely. Right. So even if somebody's elected, it's not like they're saying to themselves, well, if I don't have this job, what am I going to do? And sometimes we talk about that, right? Like someone's going to lose their seat as a congressperson or a senator or something. And they're like, boy, that really ends their life. I mean, how terrible for them. You can pretty much go get a job, right? Like there's still work to be done, or a state representative or a city manager or someone else. It's not the end of the world. These are not the only jobs. But somebody who's running against one of those people, boy, they feel like they're feeling the undertow here. They're not riding the wave. They are they're feeling beaten up. So when it starts to happen, as it starts to come about, be a voter of common good in your attitude toward these folks, because it's.
Now, Doug, there are, do you know how many elected officials there are in the United States? Without Googling? Take a guess. Do you know?
92,000.
Oh, you're way off.
147,000.
497,000.
500. Oh, I was going to say 500,000. My next guess.
497,000.
497,000. Okay.
497,000 elected officials in the United States. And I think you could be one of them. Like, why not? Right?
Yeah, why not? Yeah.
Why not?
Why not be 1%?
Like, I really think
half a percenter.
Yeah, I think it's good for democracy for people to be engaged and for people to run for office. I think that's good.
Totally good.
So I would just can I shamelessly plug here for a second?
I wish you would.
If you've ever thought about running for office, I would love for you to visit a website called youcouldrun.com. Youcouldrun.com. It has articles that I've put together along with a friend of mine who was my campaign manager on my race. We have learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work, and what it's like to be a first-time candidate, and all of it. And we've written some articles about that. We've put together a little course to help people who are first-time candidates run for office. And so if you've ever thought about running for office, youcouldrun.com, which I say parenthetically, could not believe that URL was available.
Yeah.
You could run. You could run. And if you're interested, maybe you're not interested in running for office, but you'd like to hear more about my story and the crazy attempt that I made in 2018 to run for Congress. I've written a book about it. It's called Running for Our Lives. It's available on Amazon and all those places. You'll read about when I launched my campaign, sitting at a table, filling out the paperwork to start my campaign, next to an unknown bartender from the Bronx named Alex, who later, became known by initials only. You'll read about the time I ran into my congressman, the person I was running against, randomly in a Starbucks, and the very awkward conversation that took place during as a result of that. And I came away from that feeling pretty good about the fact that he knew who I was. You'll find out about just you'll hear the story of one of the worst experiences of my life visiting. So I ran as a progressive Republican. The experiment was to challenge a conservative Republican in the Republican primary from the left. It didn't work, but it was a fun experiment. But I found myself at the Marion County Republican Party. It was like their Reagan dinner, and it was out in Yellville, Arkansas, and Yellville, Arkansas is about as big as you imagine it is. In a building full of Trump-loving Republican folks who don't live in the city, and it was just it was an amazing experience. And then I end the book talking about our first Vote Common Good tour and being on the bus for the first time. So if you're interested in that, that's out there. There's also a little documentary about my run for office that's out there as well, that probably can Google me and find this stuff. But yeah, it was an amazing experience that had no idea what I was doing, putting the train together as we were going down the tracks, as I like to say. And it's made me very passionate about helping other people run for office, because it's a great experience that I wish everybody would do once.
Well, thank you for running. And if other people are thinking about running too, you could run.com is a place you can go. All right. Is that good for today? I know we went a little bit long, but yeah. And we're in a bit of a summer season around here with the podcast, and because lots of staff things going on. So if you're regular on this stream and you listen, or the podcast, and you're like, hey, it's not as frequent as it is sometimes, being 3 days a week in its norm, that's just because stuff's going on. So we will be back in touch with you tomorrow and some of the other days this week, but we'll talk to you soon. All right, Rob, we good? Is that good enough?
We're good.
Everybody, thanks for all the comments today. Mike D and Steven, nice to have you around.
Gabbets, Alex, Denise.
Try to
Dave.
keep up and pop some things on the screen every now and then. If you're not yet watching over on YouTube, that's our preferred place. So if you don't care, just know we do. And if you do care, then we don't. So if you want to stick with where you are, that's why we put them out on all these places. But if you can get over on YouTube, we'd love to have it. And this also comes out in an audio-only podcast version if you're watching this. So if you want to subscribe to the Common Good podcast, you'll find it. And it's easy to share with friends and family and neighbors. Have you ever a neighbor share a podcast with you? Honestly, do you ever listen to a podcast anybody shares with you? I have people be like, hey, you'd love this podcast. You should listen to it. And yeah,
I have listened to individual episodes of podcasts that you have shared with me, Doug.
It's kind of a test question, wasn't it? Because I've shared a lot of them. I've shared a lot of them with you. I was going to think, I guess that would have dawned on me later, like, hey, huh. All right, well, share this one. This will probably be the real breaker. People will actually appreciate this one. All right, we'll see you later, everybody. Bye.